Hello. I'm not running a game. I'm working out of town. So I thought I'd do some videos about my Dungeons and Dragons game, and I get asked questions like, how do you do it, or how do you attack it as a dungeon master? And I'm going to break it down into sort of single word subjects. If I had to say that being a dungeon master is about one thing, near the top of the list, or at the top of the list, would be details. We as consumers in the modern world, you can go out and buy the same pair of shoes every day, be it by a machine. Every can of soda, is absolutely the same. Not so in the pseudo-medieval magic-filled world of Dungeons and Dragons. Everything that the players wear and use is not generic. If you go into town and say we pick up rations for 5 days, and hand wave it, for example, you are giving up the opportunity to make the world a deeper place. It could be adventure hooks. You go into town and the hobbit really likes pies or cheese, and say, well, no pies. Why? Well, because the bandits keep raiding the town over, and the pies never get here. Adventure. Um, if you want to say the world is grim and dark, have the things that people buy be grim and dark. The food, the culture, everything should reflect the tone you're trying to do. Like with food, sometimes you're dealing with the river folk and you're buying smoked fish. Other times you're buying from the dwarves and they have square cans of food, and sometimes it's the high elves and they have these shortbread biscuit things wrapped in leaves and stuff. Keep track of all those details, and add a little bit of life to it. I always say that a couple points here or there for personality. Maybe you buy the cheap rations and some of them aren't good, and you get food poisoning. Everything can happen. The party sent the dwarf into town. Dwarf didn't have a lot of money. Has to get haggle and stuff, and so basically he gets mostly beans for supplies. So after 4 or 5 days of adventuring underground and no one's had anything to eat but mostly beans and bread, it could affect your stealth rolls, among other things. So details, details, details. So what do? You make them up on the spot, you write them in the notebook, and make them repeatable. And as you walk around and improvise, within the framework of the tone you want to set, you will paint a world. So you don't have to go out and invent a language. You don't really have to draw a map. You just have to ask yourself, why is that town there? Who lives there? What culture do they emulate? Are they like the Germans? Are they like the Portuguese? Are they like the Greeks? Are they like the Japanese? Give yourself some starting point and say, okay, it's a logging town, and we're in the analog of Asia, Cathay, the Far East of the D&D world. What is that like? The workmen bring balls of rice with meat in the middle, wrapped in seaweed to go cut wood and things, and it'll all sort of paint itself logically. But do not pass up the opportunity to add detail and personality. Everything, especially when important things like armor and weapons and healing potions and things like that, those should not be generic. No, they shouldn't be. They should have personality. In every single encounter, there are different subspecies and regions. Is it What's more interesting, being attacked by goblins or forest goblins? But we're in a swamp. Why are the forest goblins in the swamp? Ah, you know, um, the every weapon and armor can be a couple points different to give personality. Maybe those arrows are cheaper and cause more damage, but they break more, and those arrows are more accurate, but they do less damage by a couple of points. And so they name the arrows, and you'll find that all of a sudden it matters how many of each type of arrow the archer is using. These things add a lot to the game. They really do. You wouldn't really think so. It's a little weird stuff, but the characters will become interested in it very, very quickly, and they'll start shopping and asking questions and talking to the craftspeople that make the things that they use every day. Can you put a lantern on my shield? Inventive stuff happens. Um, it's important to do that. The next one, I'm going to come up with another subject, but this subject was details. And if you have some comments, or I'd love to hear them. And if you have some details you want to share from your game, that came in there. The bean story is a classic. I'd love to hear them. So have fun, be safe, wash your hands, and I'll talk to you again soon.